This is a steal for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We have multiple new reports that have dropped, surrounding one player in particular that has fans fired up. We'll break down exactly who that is and discuss what this report means as Brad Living is preparing for something big. We also have some other updates to go over today, folks. Before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, you guys have been absolute beasts. About 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys again for your continued support over here. There's a lot to go over today, and some new reports have dropped surrounding one Leafs target in particular, and one that I'm sure a lot of fans are familiar with. And of course, with the Mitch Marner saga continuing to get more intriguing, I think is the word. We have an interesting update surrounding one particular player, and that is Nikolaj Ehlers. Now, we have discussed him on the channel before, and things have started to pick up a little bit lately surrounding the Leafs and other teams as well. And you can see this report here from Chris Johnson. He said, I think the best approach is if you take a small step back next year without Mitch Marner. I think we should acknowledge that. I still think the Leafs have playoff players on their team. And he spoke out about some potential names available this summer if both Tavares and Marner walk. And of course, he spoke about how even if the Leafs let Marner walk, they might take a bit of a step back, but they're still going to be involved in a lot of conversations. And he went on to say you'd have guys like Ehlers and Brock Bauer that the Leafs are going to be interested in, and of course, Sam Bennett. So we know the DNA talk has changed. Nikolaj Ehlers, of course, will dive into the fact that not necessarily a playoff performer, but I think this would be a steal for the Leafs if they're able to get him at a reasonable price, especially if Mitch Marner walks. But Chris Johnson linking Ehlers to the Leafs. We also have another report from The Athletic, which we'll dive into in a minute here, doing the same thing. But things are picking up a little bit around, the league surrounding Nikolaj Ehlers, and the Leafs are right in the middle of it. And I think it would be a very good replacement, even if he hasn't been the best playoff performer. I think you put him alongside, the top first couple of lines here, maybe even alongside Matthews, he would perform very, very well.
Yeah, let's keep in mind that nobody's going to be a one-for-one replacement for Mitch Marner, but that's also not the point of moving on from Mitch Marner and going in a different direction. You want to go in a different direction at this point, right? And we're going to have another video breaking down some of the Mitch Marner situation as well. And I just want to say, too, that Brock Besser would love him on the Leafs for the right dollar amount, but we'll save that for another video. But Nikolaj Ehlers, he had a pretty good season. He's pretty underrated in terms of his physicality as well. He's not the biggest player. I think he's actually Mitch Marner size as well, but pretty underrated physically as well. He had a pretty good playoffs for the Winnipeg Jets. He's dealt with some injury troubles too. So, keep that in mind, right? But for the most part, this is a really good player who can score for you. And I think it would be a really good option because there's been some, rumors and reports flying out there about 14 million or something like that, like 12 million for Nikolaj Ehlers. He's not going to get that. We have some projections we'll get into, but he's not going to get that. And I think that you're going to be able to save cap while still adding a very valuable player to the lineup. Is he the perfect fit? I'm not sure, but a lot of guys are coming off the board at this point. Brock Nelson just signed, right? So that's another guy that's off the board that was maybe linked to the Leafs as well. So things are going to start progressing pretty quickly here. Stanley Cup final starts tonight. Before we know it, the draft's going to be here, free agency is going to be here, and they're going to have to start making some decisions. So I think that Ehlers is a guy that should be near the top of their list. I think that he would be a very good acquisition for the team.
Yeah, and obviously the Jets were reportedly going to work to get him back. Of course, Kevin Cheveldayoff came out and said they've had conversations, but lately you can see here the clock is ticking for the Jets to make Nikolaj Ehlers a Jet for life, and he basically says how important he is to the team. There hasn't been much rumblings as of late surrounding Ehlers returning to the Jets, so of course I would say it's still most likely outcome is he returns to Winnipeg, but at the same time you have articles like The Athletic linking the Leafs once again to Nikolaj Ehlers and discussing how he would be a perfect fit. And it goes on to say if Mitch Marner walks as a free agent, Toronto should join the market for Ehlers. And of course, talking about the playoff style and aggressive forecheck, all these different things. But Nikolaj Ehlers, if you watch his game, he's a very, very good goal scorer. He has a very good shot, and he's very fast and electric. A bit different to the way that Mitch Marner plays. And I think that having a different just a switch up in general, I think would go a long, long way, especially assuming they bring back John Tavares, which now with the Brock Nelson extension might look a little bit different. And you can see in the bottom paragraph, this is important. He isn't a one-for-one placement for a Marner. He doesn't play matchup minutes or kill penalties, but he's a high-end puck mover who can generate rush scoring and create dangerous chances, which is what the Leafs need. And he doesn't do exactly what Marner does, but I'd say he does some things like score goals better than Mitch Marner does. And I think at this point, that's what the Leafs need more of rather than, and we know the Mitch Marner experiment as is. In a nutshell, is he a better player than Mitch Marner? Absolutely not. But for the price you're going to get him at, which we'll dive into now in a minute, assuming it's, of course, not anything above 10 million or around 10 to 11 million, you're going to be in a pretty good spot here to continue to build your team. And I know there is some people scared about the playoff production, though we had a decent playoffs this past playoffs. I ultimately think this is one of the best options, especially if the prices are going to be pretty high. And even Sam Bennett, and the question is, would you rather Nikolaj Ehlers or Sam Bennett? That's another question. but I think it would be a steal for the Leafs to be able to replace Mitch Marner with somebody who does a different thing, but still is a very good player and isn't going to completely break the bank here. And you look at his playoffs, I mean, all the talk about him being bad in the playoffs, previous years he was. This past year, think about this, 5 goals in 8 games compared to Marner's 6 goals in a very long time of playoff hockey. So, I mean, that's overblown a little bit. Of course, his career playoffs, only 21 points, so he hasn't been great in his career. But when everything lines up well, it starts to work out.
Yeah, and I mean, he hasn't been great in his career in the playoffs, but the Jets haven't been either, right? Like they've gone far one time, and then obviously they had this year as well. But keep that in mind too, right? So if you're asking me, Sam Bennett or Nikolaj Ehlers, I'm taking Sam Bennett because of the way that the Leafs are built. They have goal scoring still, and you're going to ask yourself, how do you replace 100 points? Well, Sam Bennett might get like 65 or 70 of those, right? So then you just have to use the rest of the money to find 30 more points. And, if you do add Nikolaj Ehlers, again, we'll talk about Sam Bennett in a different video, but if you do add Nikolaj Ehlers, it makes your left side that much deeper, right? Because the Leafs left side is not necessarily left wing, is not necessarily deep. Now, the right side, losing Mitch Marner takes a hit as well. But for the longest time, you've had Matthew Nyes, and then Bobby McMahon, hasn't been that great. And you've had like a couple of guys in and out of that spot, maybe Max Domi too, and then he's played center. So it makes you a little bit deeper in that way. And I do like this player. He had a great playoffs. He can score during the regular season. He's got a great shot. Like you mentioned, he can move the puck. And not only that, he can carry the puck. He's another guy who you can rely upon for zone entries and stuff like that too, right? So I like this player. Wouldn't be like maybe top 2 or 3 on my list, but obviously that is a perfect world. When we're talking about Sam Bennett and some other guys, Sam Bennett's probably staying in Florida, right? So when you're talking about things like Nikolaj Ehlers or players like Nikolaj Ehlers, yes, the Jets want to keep him. They've said that. Kevin Cheveldayoff just met with him last week, and they want to keep him essentially for life, is what he was saying. But he hasn't signed yet, right? Like there has been no talks whatsoever, and it looks like he's headed to the market. So if I was the Leafs, I would keep an eye on him because that could be very interesting. And again, with some of the projections, we got like just over 7 million, maybe 8 million, 9 million. If you can get Nikolaj Ehlers for that on the open market, that's not bad for what he brings.
Yeah, I'm looking at that very quickly before I wrap up here. You can see his projected cap at around 7 million. I mean, if they get him for 7 million, an absolute steal, it's less than Brock Nelson. So maybe this goes up a little bit now, given that he's a bit younger. But 7 million, I would get the deal done. I mean, I'd get it done at even 8 or 9 million. I'm a big fan of Nikolaj Ehlers and what he brings. You look at some of the advanced analytics. He also doesn't, obviously, his time on ice in previous years and even this last year is lower than a lot of the guys we've been talking about. So I think there's a lot of untapped potential there. And also, he's used to playing alongside very good players, but I think he could also be elevated playing alongside whoever he ends up matching up with on the Leafs if they get him there. But let us know down below what your thoughts are on this. Do you want to see Nikolaj Ehlers on the Leafs? I think it makes some sense. I think it would be a steal if they get him at the right price. And obviously, they need to continue to remain competitive, so this would help them push towards that. But thank you guys for watching. See you later.